Another week, another step further in Bo-Katan and Din Djarin's romantic relationship. That's right, BoDin for the win. Last night, we got episode 5 of season 3 of The Mandalorian, The Pirate, and we've got a lot to talk about regarding the episode, and of course, BoDin. This is the way. So where we start off is back on Navarro with Greef Karga, and he's talking with some folks about moving the trade center closer to the ships on the planet. And this conversation is interrupted by the pirate lord that we saw in episode 1. Quick sum up of it is basically Greef doesn't want to negotiate with the pirates to set a bad precedence because he wants to be done with them. So the pirate lord starts bombarding the city, and Greef Karga is forced to flee with the other civilians, and he sends out a cry for help to the New Republic officer who had said that they might help Navarro if they get into trouble in the future. So we cut to this bar at some New Republic outpost, and there's a really cool cameo in it. You can actually see Dave Filoni with his cowboy hat there. And then there's another cameo, and we get Zeb, who is also here. But anyhow, the officer is informed that he gets the distress call, and he takes a look at it and sees that it's Greef Karga, and he talks with Zeb about how he's going to go to Coruscant and basically ask for support so that they may help him out. Zeb kind of scoffs at this, but the officer heads over to Coruscant anyhow. And side note, I just gotta say, Zeb from Rebels is spot on in live action, so props to the Mandalorian team. But anyhow, Captain Carson heads to Coruscant and basically begs for help from a colonel there. And that's when the chick from episode 3 shows up, who basically wiped the mind of Dr. Pershing. And we can tell that the captain obviously knows she was with the Empire and it definitely doesn't trust her. Captain Carson continues to basically ask for help, and New Republic is not going to give them help simply because Navarro is an independent system and they just can't expend the help. The captain heads off Coruscant and then heads to where the Mandalorians are, and he finds them due to R5 being with them, and he could track R5 because R5 was with the rebellion. Finally, we can get into the juicy stuff. So the captain heads to the Mandalorian planet, and he talks with Mando about how Navarro needs the help, and you're basically his only hope. And Din's kind of like, okay. And he's like, yeah, I gotta help out a friend. And then Bo-Katan comes up from behind and is like, you can't do this alone, in a very concerning way, just showing that care for Din and affection. So then we cut over to another campfire scene, but this time all the Mandalorians are gathered, and Din is giving a speech about basically why they should help out Greef Karga, even though Greef was against them before. This time, Greef is offering a land and a home basically for the Mandalorians, and that Din is like, we should fight for our future and our foundlings and our children, namely Grogu, and of course, I'm sure, Bo-Katan in his case. So Din finishes up his speech about how the Mandalorians should go take on this pirate threat. He hands over the armor, her giant Beskar hammer, and that's where we get Din Djarin going to sit down next to Bo-Katan, and he's not just sitting next to her, he's sitting next to her. Like, they are close together, physical contact. And the craziest part about it is, like, you know, that's just natural for everyone. Everyone's just like kind of accepting and kind of assumes they're together at this point. I mean, nobody else is sitting as close together as Bo and Din are, like you can see. And then you can just see that they're just so close together, and it just feels so natural. And this makes me convinced potentially that they're kind of already potentially in a relationship, or they're at the very least very comfortable with each other so far, and this is just great news for BoDin. So then Paz Vizsla now takes the mic basically and is given his speech, and it turns out he is all for it and helping out because of the actions from last episode of Din and Bo-Katan protecting his son from the giant beast. And he's trying to hype up the Mandalorians and encourage them that they should fight for their future because they're Mandalorians, they're battle warriors. But throughout this, Bo-Katan and Din are still sitting next to each other, and it's like their movements are almost kind of in sync, further indicating, you know, that closeness and that fondness between them. So they get on their two ships, Bo-Katan's ship and Din in his N1 starfighter. Bo-Katan gives the rundown of the plan to take out the Pirate King, and then they emerge out of hyperspace in Navarro, ready for action as the dynamic duo they are. So basically, Din goes in first in the N1 and distracts the main capital pirate ship and then draws the fighters out. And this makes way and room for Bo-Katan to bring her ship in over the city and then drop Mandalorian ground infantry to take out the pirates in the city. And they're in groups of 2. While this is happening, Din continues to distract fighters and take fighters out, which then brings an opening that once Bo-Katan has dropped off the ground support, she brings her ship over and shoots at the pirate capital ship and does some damage to that. In the meantime, the ground team group of Mandalorians is clearing out the pirates on the surface, and it's going pretty well until they kind of get cornered. But then Paz Vizsla brings his heavy gunner Gatling gun out and does some heavy damage. But then a Trandoshan up in Greef Karga's mansion has a heavy turret equipped, and things start to look bad. And then the armorer sneaks up from behind and just gives everyone the business and takes out the gunner. And it's looking good. The pirates are in full retreat, and then the townspeople cut them off with the Mandalorians. But the pirate capital ship is still flying with one engine, and the Pirate King is like, well, I'm gonna kamikaze then and kind of do as much damage as he can, and he tries to start shooting at the townsfolk. But before he can, Bo-Katan and Din Djarin, displaying that chemistry yet again, work together and take down the Pirate King capital ship before it can do any more damage to the city or the people living there. And this scene is just so great because, again, it's just showing that chemistry between Bo-Katan and Din Djarin in the air, similar to what we saw in episode 3 at her castle, and this time in a much more complex manner, as there was many elements to this plan and it worked out well and just shows that chemistry between them. Everyone is celebrating, and then High Magistrate Greef Karga is basically like, we're forever in your debt, and gifts them a large chunk of land. And while this is going on, Paz Vizsla goes over to Bo-Katan and is just like, yo, the armorer needs to talk with you. Bo-Katan goes to where the old foundry is and talks with the armor, and the armor out of nowhere is like, take off your helmet. And she's a little hesitant at first, but Bo-Katan takes off her helmet, and the armor is basically like, you walk both ways, and it's kind of like up to you to reunite the Mandalorian. Bo-Katan and the armor then walk outside to where the rest of the Mandalorians are. Everyone's kind of staring at Bo-Katan, obviously, because she has her helmet off and they're confused. And the armorer basically publicly says to everyone that Bo-Katan walks both ways, and it's up to her to kind of recruit the rest of the Mandalorians so that they can kind of come together and retake Mandalore, because it is time. And when Bo-Katan is kind of walking out, she just immediately is looking at Din Djarin, looking for his approval, which he does give, it appears. And then we get a small scene at the end confirming that Moff Gideon escaped. But yeah, this episode was a lot of fun, and just a great development, I think, for BoDin, if it is going to be happening. And I'm really curious as to see, what goes from here for the rest of the season. And it really looks like they're setting up Queen Bo, and will King Din be at her side, and will they rule Mandalore together? Well, that's going to wrap it up. If you enjoyed the other parts of BoDin, make sure to drop a like. It really helps out, and subscribe for more videos. Make sure to join the Discord where we talk Mandalorian and everything else. That'll be in the comments. And yeah, I just really appreciate the support, and I'll see you guys in the next one. BoDin for the win!